The brother leader will fight on, declared Colonel Gaddafi's glove puppet in Tripoli today. As for the fact his foreign minister had turned up in London, the Libyan government spokesman shrugged his shoulders, said Moussa Koussa was tired and under stress, and the glorious revolution under the fatherly leadership of Colonel Gaddafi was bigger than any one man. The defection was consolation to the rebels, though, as they retreated for the third day in a row. But Moussa Koussa does give the British government some real problems to deal with, as Richard Watson explains.
For the Libyan regime's opponents, the defection of this man is the best news in days. Foreign Minister and former intelligence chief Moussa Koussa is a big prize indeed. In a deal which appears to have been brokered by MI6, he's now being debriefed at a safe house after flying into Farnborough Airport last night.
This was his foreign minister. This was a key member of his government. The fact that he's decided to leave and effectively defect and give up his role, I think, speaks volumes about what is happening in that regime.
The defection of Moussa Koussa presents a dilemma for the British government. On the one hand, it's a huge intelligence coup, and it may persuade others to follow suit. On the other hand, he's a deeply controversial figure, and his name has been linked to the assassination of Libyan dissidents on European soil. And some have even suggested his name may be linked to the bombing of Flight 103 over Lockerbie. Moussa Koussa in London in 1980, Colonel Gaddafi's de facto ambassador. He caused huge controversy, though, in an interview with The Times, saying the revolutionary committees have decided to kill 2 more people in the United Kingdom. I approve of this, though he said later he was misquoted. Then in 1984, PC Yvonne Fletcher was shot dead by someone inside the Libyan embassy. And then there was the murder of 270 people when Pan Am Flight 103 was blown from the skies over Lockerbie. In all these cases, Libyan intelligence was strongly implicated.
This guy is absolutely at the centre of Gaddafi's regime and has been since long before the Lockerbie atrocity. Therefore, he knows what involvement, if any, the regime had in causing the Lockerbie atrocity itself. The question is, will he tell us? And if he does, can we give credence to what he says?
Moussa Koussa's comments to The Times resulted in him being expelled. He became Libya's overseas intelligence chief, now based in Tripoli. Critics, though, say he'd set a ruthless tone for his successors in London. It was November 1995 when Ali Abu Zaid, who ran this grocer's shop in West London, was brutally attacked. He'd been a Libyan dissident living in the capital. He was stabbed multiple times, his body was mutilated, and his family believed this was a warning from Colonel Gaddafi's security forces. Ali Abu Zaid's murder was designed to show that when it came to political opposition, the regime's memory was long. We spoke to his daughter today, Huda Abu Zaid, who has long campaigned for justice for her father. There were no arrests or prosecutions at the time, but a Libyan intelligence operative who reported directly to Moussa Koussa was expelled.
Despite his having left opposition politics, he was murdered after a few months of receiving death threats, and it was a very professional, vicious, brutal murder, and a clear sign that the Gaddafi regime was still operating. Moussa Koussa was head of the intelligence service, the Foreign Intelligence Service, and was a key member of the Gaddafi regime and very, very much a trusted aide of Gaddafi, pretty much his right-hand man. I mean, he's known to some people as the envoy of death. So this is not some reforming, politician who we may sort of think, well, he worked with the Gaddafi regime because he wanted to introduce reforms. No, this is somebody who is a key player in the years of the space storms of terror, the disappearances, the murders.
In the 1990s, leaked intelligence reports from MI6 showed they assessed Moussa Koussa was behind terrorism. But by 2008-2009, he was being seen as an instrument for change. Here, highlighted at a key meeting with Tony Blair, he was there to negotiate Libya's apparent decision to give up weapons of mass destruction. The Americans were warm too, as these leaked diplomatic cables reveal. Koussa is rare among Libyan officials. He embodies a combination of intellectual acumen, operational ability and political weight. He's been willing to cast the United States government message in terms palatable to Libya's leadership. With rebels on the ground in Libya retreating in the face of renewed attacks, it's this realpolitik which many believe should now dominate the West's engagement with Moussa Koussa.
Here is an individual who has got a depth of intelligence and information, not just military, of course, but social, political, economic, all sorts of interesting. He understands how the heartbeat of the country of Libya is at the moment, and also what Gaddafi is thinking. He may not be entirely up to date, but he's a very valuable source. He's also an extremely valuable propaganda source. Not a word that one would normally like to use, but that's the truth of the matter.
It is a difficult dilemma, but I think they are right to question him and talk to him, because it may encourage others to defect and it may speed up the downfall of the Gaddafi regime. I think what we just have to ensure and be careful is that before any deal is done, before he's allowed to go on to another country, that we get answers to the questions that need to be answered of the terror and activities that he's been involved in the past 20-odd years.
There are unconfirmed reports tonight that as many as 10 other Libyan officials are on the verge of following Moussa Koussa and defecting, but the Foreign Office would not comment on this. Opposition sources have also made these claims, and if true, this has the potential to turn around the hopes for the opposition, which have been dashed by military failures on the ground in recent days.
Well, with us now to discuss the significance of the defection is the former Libyan jihadist Noman Benotman, who played a part in persuading Moussa Koussa to come to Britain. He now works for the Quilliam Foundation. The novelist Hisham Mattar has written an amazing novel called Anatomy of Disappearance, based around his own experience. His father was a Libyan diplomat who disappeared in 1990, and in a letter said that Moussa Koussa was one of his interrogators, and his family haven't seen him since. And the former Foreign Office Minister, Mike O'Brien, has met Moussa Koussa many times when in office. Let's talk first to you, Hisham Mattar. Your father was a dissident. He was in exile in Cairo. He disappeared. You then believe that during his disappearance, he was interrogated by Moussa Koussa.
Yes, my father sent letters which were smuggled out of prison. We received 3 letters between the years 1993 to 1995. And in those letters he describes in detail how he was abducted, where he was placed, how he was treated, the people who interrogated him. And yes, he names Moussa Koussa as one of the interrogators.
Does he say anything more than naming him?
He says not particularly on Moussa Koussa, no, but I mean he says a lot of detail about how he was treated, that he was tortured, that he was not allowed out of his cell for the first 2 years, except 8 times in each year.
It's inconceivable that a man who took part in the interrogations was unaware of the fact that the person he was interrogating had been tortured.
Absolutely, and I think if you had to choose one person that is more connected not only to the ruthlessness of the violence exacted by the Libyan dictatorship on its people, but the macabre nature of it, then you wouldn't do better than choosing Moussa Koussa.
No, but not, you've met him many times. He doesn't look like a brute.
Yeah, it depends, because everybody knows he is like. I'm always saying he is the regime, not just like close from the regime. Everybody knows that. It's a fact, and he spent like 17 years the head of the Libyan intelligence service. So everybody, he's part of the DNA of the Libyan regime. But I think there's 2 issues here to talk about legal issues and people they have like a legitimate claim.
Okay, we'll come on to those in a second or two. But you also met him.
Yes, I've met him.
What sort of a man is he?
He is a clever, urbane head of a brutal intelligence service when I met him. But he was also the key player, I would say, in convincing Gaddafi to get rid of weapons of mass destruction, the nuclear and chemical weapons.
You sort of share this view that he's absolutely integral to the Gaddafi regime.
He is absolutely central, less high profile now than he was. People like Saif and the sons of Gaddafi have taken more control, much, I might add, even when I was meeting with him back in 2002, 2003, to Moussa Koussa's upset. He didn't like the sons and the influence they were gaining, but they're much more influential now than they were then. He didn't like that.
The key question now is that this guy is in this country. You've told us, all of you, a little bit of what he's like. What should the British do with him? What do you think?
with all due respect to the case, you can't undermine legitimate, cases from people like Hisham and a lot of Libyans. I'm sure this, but I think the key issue here, he is cooperating with the authorities now, okay, voluntarily, and including cases, from like Libyans in exile or cases had to do with international terrorism. I'm sure, it's legitimate to ask him specifically about these details, to reveal everything he has. It's without a doubt, no one can deny people this right. At the same time, I think we have a huge problem, Libya now in a situation of war. So how the British government going to strike balance? By the way, British government acting on behalf of the international community now, because they sent message, Tuesday, to people around calling Gaddafi to defect and give up the regime and to join the people. So,
Hisham, you must be you're in an absolutely key position on all of this. Your family suffered personally at this man's hands, and yet presumably you support the revolution in Libya. And in order for other people to be induced to come over, they must be presumably offered some prospect of freedom from inquiry about the crimes they committed there or elsewhere.
More importantly than my own family suffering, many other people suffered. The country suffered under these people. And history shows us that actually if you don't face up to past atrocities, then the change that you're having is a compromised change. This is a fantastic opportunity for Libya to address these crimes head on, and to have a new era of accountability, of sanity, because violence has not only been indiscriminate and hideous, but it had this kind of aspect of madness about it, where no one is ever accountable.
There's a specific problem with this man here now. What do you think, Mike O'Brien? You were in government.
Yes, I was. I think the government was right today to say no immunity, but let's look at the evidence, because proving beyond a reasonable doubt that someone has committed atrocities, even though they've been head of a brutal intelligence service, may be more difficult in a court of law than some people think.
Morally, though, what should the government be thinking?
Well, the government has to ensure that we get rid of Gaddafi. How are we going to ensure that the people who are currently considering whether to defect or not do defect? Certainly not by arresting Moussa Koussa, at least at this point.
That sounds like a tawdry deal to me.
What it sounds like is not wanting more people to die, and the best way, this is a real blow to Gaddafi, a real blow, because this guy was central to his regime. And what we need to do is get others to defect and erode Gaddafi's regime from within, and that means we have got to encourage them to come over. So, we are not in a children's playground. We are in the real world. We've got to make tough decisions. And today I say, as far as Moussa Koussa is concerned, no immunity, consider the evidence, but also ensure that we encourage others to defect too.
Hisham, what would you like to see happen to him?
I would like to see him face a fair and robust trial. I think that's what the Libyan people deserve.
Do you believe that the British government should have, well, they haven't offered him immunity. They've said specifically he won't have immunity. Is that enough?
It's hard. It's hard for me to say, because I don't know enough about the conversations that are taking place. What I am concerned about, though, is how this is deflecting from the humanitarian disaster. That it's very right for us to be talking about this, but I'm also saying that what is taking place right now, particularly in Misrata, is a disaster, and I hope that this issue is not going to deflect from that too much.
Are there other members of the regime who are contemplating defection, as far as you know?
Oh yeah, of course. It's there's but you talk about 15 to 20 people, and they are very close from Moussa Koussa as well, including generals. And that's I think the dilemma here we have. All of them now, they're watching, including ministers at his level. I'm telling you facts here, not just analysis. I'm aware of that. So the problem is everybody looking at him now and how he will be treated. So if something happened to him, I don't think anyone will really be encouraged to carry on, you know, or to defect from the regime. And we're facing real situation now in Libya there, you know. So I think the best thing to do it, if we can, like, as I told you, legally, you know, first of all, we need to build a case. If there is a case against him, can stand before trial, that's okay. You know, the last couple of years, I think that's why I was encouraging not just Koussa, but other people to come to London. You know why? Because we have experience in UK here the last couple of years. People, they've been suspect terrorists. And a lot of us, we know some people, they are real suspects, but it was very hard to build a case against them before court. You know, that's what it's. So I think justice, it's the most important thing. I believe in that. And myself, I am 100% trust the British justice. And I tell you something, Moussa Koussa as well. And he's aware of what's going to happen to him here, you know. So let's talk about legal issues. And I think I believe in safe hands, which is like the officials and the government. I would like to add something here.
Very quickly.
People, they talk about the Lockerbie, you know. It's, as far as I'm concerned, let's talk about it.
Quickly.
Yeah, Moussa Koussa involved in the Lockerbie, you know. There's no legal document, a single one, you know, attached him or accusing him legally as part of Lockerbie conspiracy.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you all very much indeed.